And what do you mean that we partake in the creation of worlds? Do you think God is bothered when we use other terms like source, creator of the universe, in addition to God? You said that there are countless levels of heaven. So did you see this? Howard, is there anything else that you could describe about heaven that would kind of surprise people?
Well, okay. Do you want me to be controversial?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to go for it.
This is Beyond with Heather Tesch, where we examine near-death experiences and life itself, hopefully making this life a little better. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining me and my guest. Hello to you, Howard Storm.
Hello, Heather.
It is such a treat to talk to you. I have already done several episodes with you, and I'll have links to all of those in the description. And we've talked about so many great things. I love how you get in depth on so many topics. When I originally interviewed you, I asked you about something and we discussed it. And then I got comments saying, why didn't you ask about this? So I'm going to try to make up for that now and
Okay.
ask you this question.
Okay.
So we were talking about animals, and we are talking about the potential that maybe, just maybe, some of our animals, when they die, they come back to us in the form of another animal.
Yes.
And so people said, well, what about people? What does Howard think about reincarnation? So I failed to ask you that before, so I need to ask you now.
Well, I asked Jesus about reincarnation, and I'm going to tell you what he told me as faithfully as I can possibly um, restate what he said. He said, there is no reincarnation except under special circumstances. Um, Now, that was kind of seemed like a definitive answer at the time, so I didn't explore it any further, which I could have if I wanted to, but I didn't. Um, as probably all of our viewers know, we have brothers and sisters all over the world of different religions whose whole religion is based on the idea of reincarnation. Um, And as I understand it, and this has been confirmed by people of that faith, that, for example, in Hinduism and much of Buddhism, um, people are reincarnated not 3 or 4 times or 10 or 100 times, but millions of times until they achieve perfection. Um, I do not subscribe to that. And one of the problems with that theory is uh, if one is here for countless lives to become perfect, there is absolutely no need or use for a savior. Therefore, what good is Jesus?
Do you think when people are recalling past lives that they're actually tapping into some sort of collective consciousness?
Absolutely. I had a group of um, near death experiences at my house many years ago. And there were 8 of us, and they had all had very real, very deep, intense near death experiences. And we talked about um, what you and I are talking about right now. And that was the conclusion that we unanimously came to. For example, one of the ways to describe God is omniscient. Another way, which of course means God knows everything. Um, Another way to describe God is universal consciousness. Another way to describe God is Christ consciousness. Um, Another way to describe God is simply consciousness. Um, Therefore, I believe, and I think many people believe, that out there in the universe is this awareness, this consciousness that knows everything. And we all agreed that it is possible, sometimes by an act of will and sometimes unknowingly, to tap into that consciousness. I have had some experiences of that, but I am also very aware that those experiences, although as vivid and as real as those experiences seem to be, do not prove that I was actually in that past life or that I was that past person.
You were just describing God, and you use several ways to describe God. Many people say that have had near-death experiences that God is just not a big enough word to describe God. It's God is an indescribable. Do you think God is bothered when we use other terms like source, creator of the universe, in addition to God?
Oh, absolutely not. The more the more we come up with, the better it is. Of course, the um, secret and holy name of God in Judaism, Yahweh. Um, I studied that word extensively in seminary, and a better translation of that is the one who causes. And so, to abbreviate that name, the holy name of God given to the Jewish people in the Bible, given to Moses, is the source, the creator. You know, um, God knows that our language is utterly inadequate to fairly describe God. We just do the best we can. Like, for example, the word love, it's totally inadequate to describe what love really means. But what else do we have in the English language?
Howard, you casually mentioned a few things in your book that I want to find out a little bit more about. One, you said that there are countless levels of heaven. So, did you see this?
Yes, I did. Matter of fact, Jesus told me that everything good that ever was, everything good that is all in heaven, and all good in the future will be in heaven as well. Heaven is so vast that describing heaven as a vast galaxy doesn't begin to describe it.
You did take a tour of heaven. You said you were more of an observer, but
Yes.
can you describe some of the things that you saw?
Um, yeah, I can, but this might suspend my credibility among some of the listeners because it's so um, amazing. For example, everything is alive in heaven: the stones, the trees, the grass, the flowers, the oceans, the skies. It's all alive. Um, and one can actually experience uh, the grass and the flowers and the clouds singing praises of God. How's that for wild? Um, you know, one of the unfortunate things that people do when they talk about heaven is they simply project their experiences of this world in heaven onto heaven, and that does heaven a great injustice. Heaven is absolutely ruled by God's love, and everything in heaven is beautiful and loving and kind and patient and filled with God's love. Therefore, and Jesus told me this, our journey in heaven um, is growing in our sanctification, which means growing in our holiness, in our relationship with God, to ultimately become of the heavenly choir and participating with God in our own humble way in the creation of the worlds that God has made.
And what do you mean that we partake in the creation of worlds?
Participate. Um, that according to Jesus, and I learned this much later listening to theoretical physicists, everything in the universe, everything in our physical universe is, in fact, vibratory states. All matter and all energy are vibratory states of space. Where does that come from? God and the heavenly choir. That is what God is doing, and that is what the heavenly choir is doing. And Jesus told me that if they were to stop doing it, the physical universe and the multi universes would all vanish and cease to exist instantaneously. Creation didn't happen um, 45 million years ago or whatever. Creation is an ongoing process, and we are part of it. And when we go to heaven, we get to um, participate in that creative process.
I love the idea of being part of the creative process. But I'll be honest, what sounds a little boring to me is when you describe being in a choir. One, I can't sing,
Okay.
but so I imagine it's much more.
Okay. I don't like using the term choir because, that um, creates what we know about choirs of people, hopefully singing in harmony with one another, hopefully. Um,
Right.
the term that I use, which I didn't today, which I'm going into now, is I like to call it the symphony orchestra, to use an image that's a little more complicated, a little more sophisticated than a choir. And as Jesus explained to me, our life experience creates us to become an instrument of God's creation. So it's not necessarily about being a vocalist, because some of us have become flautists, some of us have become harpists, some of us play the timpanis. I want to play the timpanis. I want to beat those skins, baby. Some of us, uh, play the violin. Some of us play the piano. Some of us just tinkle the triangle. Um, Now, these are, of course, all metaphors. I don't mean any of this literally, right? The point is that the gifts, talents that we've developed in this world become the way we glorify and worship God, and how we become part of the creation.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think it's nice to know that the gifts that we are given here on earth are things that we should be using.
Yes.
Howard, is there anything else that you could describe about heaven that would kind of surprise people?
Well, okay. Do you want me to be controversial?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to go for it. The whole idea of purgatory. The word purgatory means purification. It also means um, arriving at or trying to achieve perfection. Purgatory is not NOT, not punishment. Purgatory is purification. It is part of heaven. It's not part of hell. And um, according to what I understand from reliable people in Catholic theology, every single person who dies begins their process of purgation, including Mother Teresa.
It's rehabilitation.
Amen. You just said it perfectly. And it's hard to understand how Mother Teresa could use a little purification. But if anyone reads the lives of the saints, and particularly the things that they've said, they are more scrupulous in looking at themselves than any of us are. That's one of the reasons why they've become saints. And they are very aware of their flaws. So even the saints have some stuff that they need to work out. Some of us have more to do. Our process of purification may take a tad longer than others, but the point is that purgatory is entry level to going into heaven.
Howard, something else that you mentioned in your book, but you do not go into any details, so I'm going to ask you to please give us a few right now, is you mentioned that Jesus has appeared to you a few times since you had your near-death experience. Can you share any of those with us?
Oh, yeah. Um, Here's one that was very important to me. When I had decided that I really wanted to go into the full-time ministry, and before I started seminary, I was painfully aware of what that was going to cost me in terms of my life. My biggest hesitancy about going into the ministry was this. I knew from my experience as a lay minister at my church and from talking to other pastors, one of the biggest burdens of being a pastor is hearing all the suffering and sorrows of people that come to their pastors looking for answers. If you talk to any pastor, one thing you got to find out is that is one of the really hardest parts of ministry, because that's what happens to you every week. It's not a sometime thing. If your congregation to trust you, they want to dump all their pain on the pastor looking for help. So I did an 8-day silent retreat with the Jesuits in Cincinnati at the Jesuit Renewal Center, and that was my big question. 7.5 days later, I had not gotten an answer. And so in my private thoughts and prayers, I'm going, oh, gee, thanks God a lot. I just left my family and my friends and my job for an 8-day silent retreat, and I've gotten nothing. I have not gotten any answer to my prayer. Gee, thanks a lot. Is this how you treat your friends? So the last night at that Jesuit Renewal Center at 11 o'clock at night, by the way, curfew was 9 o'clock, so I was a bad boy. I snuck out of my room and went into the chapel where there was no light except for the candle over the host up front. That was the only light in that room, which wasn't much. I went in there, sat on a pillow on the floor, and prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed. Nothing. I'm getting really discouraged. And while I had my head down, I realized that the room was becoming brighter and brighter and brighter. And as I looked around the room, I saw that the stations of the cross, which were all around me in that chapel, started to become animated. And these little depictions of Jesus's journey on the road to Calvary were becoming alive. And I'm like, whoa, crazy, wonderful, amazing. What's going on here? And I was staring at them, and then I became aware of a presence in front of me. And with a few feet in front of me was Jesus dressed and looking exactly the way he looks in all of our depictions of him. Long hair, beard, red shawl, rope belt, etc., sandaled feet. There he was, standing right in front of me. I was, of course, delighted and freaked out, amazed, bewildered, everything. And he spoke to me. And this is what he said. Everything that comes to you, everything that is a burden to you, give it to me and I will handle it. And you will be free to continue to do your ministry in love and joy. It was so wonderful that I began to weep. My head went down for just a few moments, and when I brought my head back up, he was gone. Now, I had gotten an answer to my prayer, and that advice has sustained me in 30 years of pastoring churches. And of course, there's a wonderful line in the Bible, come to me, all ye who are weary and heavy burdened, and I will give you rest, etc. That's what Jesus told me, except in slightly different language.
And it's advice that really applies to all of us.
Yes.
Howard, it has been such a pleasure talking to you. It was great to read your book as well. And of course, I'll have links to this for people that want to read it. They can find a link in the description. Is there anything that you would like to share in terms of where people can go to find this book or your other books?
Sure. First of all, I've written 5 books. They're all on Amazon.com. If they want to go to a link, I have a website, howardstorm.com. There's links there. I'm not in the business of selling books, so either through Amazon or hopefully at some time some bookstores may carry it. But it's easy to get to. If anyone wants to connect with me on my website, there's a connect place, and that's my email, and it comes directly to me, and I respond to every email I get.
Which is wonderful that you do that. I know people greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Howard, I cannot tell you, it has been such a pleasure. I really enjoy talking to you, and I love that I can just ask you anything and that you're always very open to listening and responding.
Well, thank you, Heather. You are a real joy to be with.
Well, thank you so much. And you have a wonderful day. And I wish you the best, Howard. And for everybody listening, if you want to say a prayer for Howard and his eyesight, or just any kind of a wellness prayer, I'm sure, Howard, you would welcome that.
Absolutely. I know God's listening. We just got to keep hammering on the door.
Thank you, Howard. Take care.
Thank you. God bless you.
A big thank you to all of you who stuck around for all 3 episodes. I love talking to Howard, and I feel like we covered so many topics. And many of the questions were my own curiosity, but also some of those questions I ask because I see you commenting on them in the comments section. So I always appreciate your comments and I do read them. So thank you, everybody. And if you'd like to give me your thoughts on this one, I would also appreciate that. If you prefer, just write the words "made it." That is also very much appreciated. Give it a like if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't, and always find more of my episodes in the playlist, and there's always a link in the description. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here today, for watching these episodes with Howard Storm. and I hope to see you in the next episode.
Thanks for joining me on Beyond with Heather Tesch. Please add comments and questions you'd like future guests to answer. Also, if you liked what you heard, please hit the thumbs up button and subscribe. That'll help keep this podcast going. You can also go to Beyond with Heather Tesch to look for more episodes.